All right. Good afternoon, and thank you all for joining us for a panel discussion on the Alaska Tribal Welfare Compact. Today, we are joined by Representative Tiffany Zulkosky. She'll be joining us a little bit late, as well as TFYS Director Mary Johnson, Tanana Chiefs Conference General Counsel Natasha Singh, and COARC Inc.'s Traci McGarry, who is one of the co-leads of the compact. For those of you who do not already know me, my name is Tasha Hodge, and I serve as the 4th Vice President of Tlingit and Haida. I have volunteered with Children in Need of Aid through the Court-Appointed Special Advocate Program. I was also one of the first Alaska Natives to go through the State of Alaska training, where I saw firsthand the challenges that children and families encounter. This volunteer experience strengthened my advocacy for families that are working to keep their families together. I think we can all agree this topic is important to all of us. It impacts us in one way or another. Turning now to our guests, thank you all for joining us. Please introduce yourselves, starting with Mary Johnson, and then Traci McGarry, Natasha, and then Representative Zulkosky.
Thank you, Tasha, and I'm so happy to be a part of this forum today. This is an issue that's very close to my heart. It's something that both Traci and I have spent quite a few years working on, is the Child Welfare Compact. My name is Mary Johnson, and I was born and raised in Sitka and recently moved from Fairbanks to Juneau to work for Tlingit and Haida as the Tribal Family and Youth Services Director. It is a privilege to be back in the work. I'm excited to be back in the work, and I'm just excited to share the innovative system change work that we're doing in child welfare. And I just want to say thank you again for the invite.
Okay, hello everyone. My name is Traci McGarry. Thank you for asking me to be on this panel today. Child welfare is very, very important to me, as with I'm sure all of our panelists. I was born and raised in Iowa. I'm actually back in the Midwest right now. I moved to Alaska in 2010, and I came up as a school counselor for Bering Strait School District in Nome and Teller, one of our villages. And then I did that for a couple of years, and then I was asked to come over to COARC to be the program director for their children and family services and child advocacy programs. So I've been doing that since then. I have been a very active member of the Tribal State Collaboration Group, and I was elected as Northern co-chair for that group when Mary was moving to a different position in Fairbanks. And then on its compact, I was elected as a co-lead. So this is something that's very near and dear to me. I'm really hoping that together we can improve outcomes for kids. Thanks again for having me.
Tasha may be having some technical difficulties. Are you with us, Tasha?
Oh. Yes, thank you. Thank you for those introductions. And it looks like we did get a last minute notice that Representative Zulkosky is caught up in some work. And so she's not going to be able to join us this afternoon. So the Alaska Tribal Child Welfare Compact was signed in October of 2017 between the state of Alaska and 18 Alaska tribes and tribal organizations to provide child welfare services, with the goal of reducing disproportionate number of Alaska Native children in foster care. Traci, What are your goals of the compact from the perspective of tribes and tribal organizations? Anyone else, please feel free to chime in.
Thank you. We've been working as the Tribal State Collaboration Group for over 25 years to really work specifically with Alaska Native children and families. There's a really high rate of disproportionality. Alaska Native children make up about 15% of the population, but 65% of the population of kids in custody are Alaska Native. And that's just not right. And we know that there are ways that we can work on it together. And we also know that kids need more services in their region with their cultural and traditions that they wouldn't be getting if they needed to move to a different region or a bigger area to get those services. So we really wanted to transform child welfare. What we had been doing hadn't really been working. The disproportionality rate at one point went down to about 55%, but then it just went back up again. So back up to 65%. So we realized what we've always been doing and trying these things hasn't been working. And we're hoping that the Child Welfare Compact will really take over and that those numbers will decrease eventually. I also wanted to thank Representative Zulkosky for her House Bill 184 that was passed. That is very exciting, and I'm glad to see that sort of that's taking off. I'm really happy about that, and I want to make sure to thank her for that. So, including transforming child welfare, we really want to provide more quality services. We know that with openings in OCS and the turnover, which I believe is roughly 50% right now, unfortunately, our kids and families are not getting the services that they require, and that they're required by law, but then also that they really need. And we believe that as tribes, we would be able to offer those more quality services in a timely manner. Also, families will be more receptive to tribal workers, we believe, to work with them and to also, use services that aren't necessarily, to provide services that are more geared to what their needs are and not necessarily what the needs of somebody in Anchorage or Fairbanks or something like that would be. And we're really, again, working on lowering the percentage of disproportionality Alaska Native children in care. But really, we want to transform this for all kids in the state, so that all kids are receiving services that they need. And so we're starting off with the compact. I think it's the right way to go. We've been working, like Mary said, we've been working for a while to get this up and going. So it's very important for this to happen and to continue.
Thank you, Traci. Really appreciate that insight. And it looks like Representative Zulkosky was able to join us. Representative, are you able to provide us with a short introduction? Thank you.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Apologies for being late. We are beginning the end of session slog of daily floor sessions, so I was caught up on the House floor until just now. For those I haven't had the opportunity to meet, it's always great to join Central Council of Tlingit and Haida for Native Issues Forum to talk about different issues in front of the Alaska Native community, particularly here in the legislature and what we're doing to work on them together. My name is Representative Tiffany Zulkosky. I represent House District 38 in the Alaska State Legislature. This is a position that I've held since 2018. I am the proud daughter of the late Joe Hines of Kipnuk and Bethel and Patricia Zulkosky of Bethel and now Anchorage. My grandparents are the late John and Jane Hines of Quigilanuk and Kipnuk, as well as Lucille and Wes Hoshide of Baudette, Minnesota. And it's been my privilege to serve as the chair of the Tribal Affairs Committee since its inception in 2019, and to continue to work as a co-chair on the House Health and Social Services Committee, of which I think the Alaska Tribal Child Welfare Compact really exemplifies the nexus between child welfare and social services issues and Alaska Native tribal issues. So Guyana for the opportunity to be here, and I'm excited to join the conversation and provide updates and answer questions as best I can.
Thank you for that introduction. We're going to go back to you discussing the compact. Mary, when you think of our children, communities, and culture, what is the importance of this compact? What is at risk when our children are placed in non-native foster home or adoptive family?
Sure. And first of all, I just have to start out by echoing Tracy's thank you to Representative Zulkosky, because it's amazing to have been doing this work for so long and to finally get the attention for tribal child welfare and child welfare in general in our state. It's a topic that a lot of people don't want to talk about, but it has a huge impact on everything that we do in our state, going from behavioral health, health services, just across the board. It's something that we've recognized in our tribal state collaboration group, that child welfare needs to be a top priority for our state. So I really appreciate it being recognized at the level that it is now. So the importance of the compact is the state is recognizing that tribes have authority over their citizens. It's also recognizing that tribes have been doing the work for forever, that in some form or fashion, tribes have been taking care of their children and families and finding ways to keep them safe without a set of rules or without a set of regulations to follow. That there's been an informal cultural way that tribes watch over their people. So it is giving tribes the recognition that they know how to keep families safe. In recent history, and by recent, it's like the past 25 to 30 years, tribes have been beginning to build their capacity to provide tribal child welfare services. And this has been very difficult because we do so with limited funds, and then also having to make one way of doing things, a cultural way of doing things, fit into the rules and regulations of where our funding sources come from. And that has been a huge challenge, but it's been one that we found that we can get around through being very creative. A lot of our families and communities have a history of distrust with outside resources. So we've watched it over the years, we've lived it daily. The data, like Traci mentioned, shows that there's a disproportionate number of children in care. It makes us wonder, are our systems working properly? Are we able to trust a system to work with them, for them to be true partners with us, or are we being judged harshly? Over the years, we have spent a lot of time building up partnerships with our state partners and building that trust. So at least the level that we're at right now, we feel that the Child Welfare Compact, it recognizes that tribes can do the work, that we know how to do it properly, that we're able to take care of children and families and do so in a safe way. And what is at risk? That's a great question. And I think it's a great question with where we're at right now in our state government. So what is at risk, in my opinion, is that we continue to operate as is, where we see our state child welfare system really struggling. And even though it's easy to get upset with our state for their challenges and their struggles, it's also really important that for us to recognize that if our state continues to struggle providing child welfare services, not only are our tribal children not receiving the help that they need, but the entire state of children and families are not receiving the help that they need. So I think by letting us and working toward the work that we want to do on the compact is so important for system change. It's a step in the right direction, and it's allowing tribes to give a helping hand and to be able to ease the burden of the state.
Thank you.
If okay, I'd like to add just a little bit to Mary's answer. So thanks. So she had talked about, I agree with everything she said, first off. And I think one of the biggest risks that we found, we're a pretty rural community. I mean, the whole state's rural, but pretty tiny up here. And what we found is that when kids leave our region, it's very rare that they come back. So they're either, they go to treatment, and then they age out, and who knows where they might be when that happens, or they're adopted out, and not necessarily by Alaska Native parents or family members. So that's something that we've been really trying, and I'm going to just put a plug in real quick, that if you're interested in becoming a foster home or relative placement, please put your name in. You can get a hold of me or Mary. We can get you to the right place. It's really, really needed. With COVID, we lost a lot of our foster parents. So we really need those numbers to come back up so that kids from our different regions can stay there and continue being around family members and continue the customs and traditions that have been built over years and years. So just wanted to throw that in.
Thank you, Traci. That was, I think, a really important addition in soliciting for families to get involved with foster care and trying to keep our families together, at the very least in the region. Next, I'd like to ask Representative Zulkosky, prior to the compact, the child welfare system was managed solely by the state of Alaska's Office of Children's Services. Why is it important for tribes and organizations to be included in the child welfare system?
That's a really great question. In terms of looking at the statistics as we consider different policies, and I'm so excited and so inspired by the work of the Tribal Child Welfare Compact. It sets such a great example of what historic landmark state and tribal relations should and can look like. I think with respect to that particular question, the Office of Children's Services really struggles with meeting its mission in the sense that we're keeping services as close to home as possible. We're providing culturally relevant supports to families that are impacted. And we're doing all of this with providing the most efficient services and funding made available through the state. Unfortunately, the Office of Children's Services on average sees a turnover of its caseworkers around 41.9%. And in some regions that's lower, that might be in the mid to high 30s. In some regions that's a lot higher, in the mid 50s percentile. Additionally, we know that, and maybe this has already been covered, so apologies if this is repetitive, but additionally, we know that Alaska Native children, despite only representing roughly 15% of Alaska's population of children, are 60 to 65% represented in the state custody system. And so clearly there are not, the state supports that are in place are not or have not been working. And I think that what we've seen and why I've proposed House Bill 84 and appreciate Traci's recognition of the work there and Mary's recognition of the work there. Quick side note, it's made it through both committees of referral, state affairs and tribal affairs. And we anticipate seeing it on the House floor, hopefully before end of session. I think what the Tribal Child Welfare Compact offers is a resource for the state to leverage an existing footprint of highly effective, highly efficient, culturally relevant programs and services that can really transform what child welfare looks like in the state of Alaska. And so I have been excited in light of the difficult statistics around the ability for the Office of Children's Services to meet its mission to uphold the Indian Child Welfare Act within the state of Alaska, to make sure that no child in any part of the state is left without the resources and family supports that are needed. Tribes offer an incredibly great opportunity to provide the support that benefit the families, the children, as well as the state of Alaska. And so I think that's where we see the opportunity for the compact to really transform the child welfare system that we currently see through OCS.
Thank you, Tiffany. Mary, in 2016, Tlingit and Haida signed a tribal Title 4E maintenance agreement with the state of Alaska. Can you talk about this agreement that took place prior to the compact?
Of course, it's one of my favorite topics ever. So just a tad bit of history prior to the Title 4E maintenance agreements. We've had about, I want to say 18, but the number could have changed, of tribes in Alaska that have had tribal Title 4E administration and training agreements with the state, pass-through agreements. And what that means is that any work done by tribes that would have been done by the state has an agreement with tribes where they would pass through federal funds to help us to build our capacity in building up our tribal child welfare systems. The 4E maintenance agreements, which is just beyond exciting, and 4E is a complex program, but it's one that child welfare everywhere depends on, because it is a reimbursement program for services through the federal government. It makes up a pretty significant percentage of our state's child welfare budget. And if done properly and set up properly through the agreements, it can make up a significant part of our tribal child welfare budgets. So there are currently two 4E maintenance agreements in the state. One is with Tlingit and Haida, the other is with Tananachi's Conference. And what this allows us to do is, when cases transfer to tribal court from state court, and in some agreements also, if the cases were initiated in tribal court, the maintenance agreement will cover the full maintenance or foster care payment for our foster families. This is significant for many reasons as well. One, tribes just don't have the money to be making foster care payments. And they are very, very necessary, because it's money that's meant to supplement the family's income and budget to support the children that are in their home. When the state or tribe takes custody of children, they're essentially becoming that child's parent and are tasked with providing the child with every need that they would have if in their own parents' home. So the maintenance agreement allows tribes who have the capacity to transfer cases from state to tribal court, so we can take over more of the work in our tribal child welfare systems. There's also a lot of work done over the years to where work groups created a set of tribal foster care licensing standards, which all meet the federal guidelines. We don't have to meet the state guidelines, because the 4E money is federal money. And it also allows us to be creative in allowing and to build in some of our culture into how we work with our families, how we do the licensing process. The licensing process, you'll find, is very similar to the states. There's very few things that are different. One of my big dreams, goals, and wishes that I'm just going to put out there is that someday the state will recognize a tribal foster care license, because we do meet the federal requirements, and be able to place children in state custody in a tribal foster home, because they go through the same set of background checks, fingerprints, everything. Everything you can name. There's just a few differences to where we determine that a home is safe. So the maintenance agreement is exciting as far as it helps move the work along. It helps raise the bar in tribal child welfare of not only being able to care for children, but being able to do so in a way that what I like to say is doing it better than the state. If we are going to take on work, we want to do it better than. We don't want it to do it the same. We want to do it in a way that is effective working with families. And we also want to make sure that we meet all of the rules that we set up for ourselves.
Thank you, Mary. I really enjoyed hearing you say that you would like to see the state and the tribe work together to recognize tribal foster care licensing. This question is for everyone. Under the compact, how are tribes and tribal organizations funding the child welfare services? Are there any issues with the funding?
I can probably get started on this, and I'm looking to Traci and Mary. But as I understand it, so currently the Tribal Child Welfare Compact is an executive initiative nestled within the governor's office, which was how it began under the Walker administration and how it continues under the Dunleavy administration. Every year during annual negotiations, in addition to negotiating the particular scopes of work, the state and tribes also negotiate the funding agreements. Currently, the Office of Children's Services funds the Tribal Child Welfare Compact through its frontline social workers budget line item in the Department of Health and Social Services budget. This was an area of interest as we were going through the budget subcommittee process for this particular fiscal year. In the discussions that I've had with tribal cosigners, as well as the compact's facilitator, Nicole Borromeo, it has been interesting to look back at the previous fiscal years that the compact has been in place. Currently, the state of Alaska funds the Tribal Child Welfare Compact at about $1.6 million annually across all cosigners and across all scopes of work as negotiated through the agreement that we see on the screen. What we do know is that the initial $1.6 million was what was put in place in the primary fiscal year. The first fiscal year, the $1.6 million was intended to help tribes develop capacity and implement its initial scopes of work. In FY18, I believe, and continuing into FY19, under the expanded scopes of work, there was not an additional increase in funding for the compact from the state. And so essentially there has been an initial expansion to the scopes of work by tribal cosigners who believe in this work, as well as the state, without an additional infusion of resources. So tribes have continued to underwrite the compact because of the belief that there's an opportunity to transform the child welfare program here in Alaska. This year, understanding this history in the HES budget subcommittee, I proposed a $3.4 million increase to the compact for being able to set aside hopefully a $5 million total appropriation for implementing the compact throughout the next fiscal year. So far, that's made it into the House's version of the operating budget, but we have much work to do through making sure that it survives through the Senate and advocating to the governor's office to maintain that funding. when the operating budget finally hits his desk. But I think what's really important to underscore here is that the Tribal Child Welfare Compact has already expanded its particular scopes of work without an additional infusion of resources, and has continued because of the good work and the belief of tribes in the opportunity to support the state in its mission. And I've been a long time proponent and advocate for ensuring that compacting and partnership with tribes is not displacing the state's financial burden onto tribes, but to really improve and leverage existing resources where we can, when we can. And so that's an update on how the compact is funded, additional resources that we hope to see infused in the program that we hope will align with the continued work that we're doing in protecting the compact in statute.
And if I could add to that, a bit of history is when we first started working on the compact, that we had co-signers that from tribes of all sorts of sizes, from small tribes to who were just starting to build up their tribal child welfare systems, to larger tribal organizations who already had really well-established capacity to provide services. So as we moved along over the years, the need has grown, and how we supplement it or how we pay for it has taken away from other work that we've done to try to move the compact along, because we do recognize how important it is to be successful with the compact. The services are great as far as the scopes of work that we are providing. There are things that need to happen anyhow. We want to be good partners to the state, but it does take away from some of the work that we would be doing as far as ICWA compliance, because we don't get much money for tribal child welfare just overall. Also taking into consideration our smaller tribes that have joined in, they are trying to hire staff without knowing what our budget will look like for each year as it comes. And when you try to hire staff in child welfare, and if they do ask, how's my position funded, it is very difficult to let them know that you are going to be doing work under our compact, and we don't know if we'll be getting the money next year or not. Of course, that's not something that I personally would practice saying to staff, but it is the reality of how we set up our programming in tribal child welfare. Is if we don't know how much money we'll be getting each year, it makes it very difficult to do the future planning. We're investing a lot of time, resources, and energy into building up this agreement as far as learning the state's data management system, learning their way of tracking our staff to be capable of doing all of that. And to be able to put that energy in, we do need the extra resources. And it has grown over the years.
Yes, I wholeheartedly agree with Mary. Our first year, we received funding for one FTE, or one full-time staff member. And we, how we did it is we all looked at our slotting where we would put people, and then we took the average with our indirect included. And that was it. They did give us, we received $20,000, thankfully, the first year to kind of get that in place for like extra supplies and really just getting the infrastructure in place. And sometimes that took longer for some people than others. And especially, again, like Mary said, with the small tribes, they might have not had a program before. And so they really had to build that up, and we're kind of guessing at what the salary might be. So that's rough. What I've done to supplement that, because there are 5 scopes, one person cannot, 5 scopes of work. There's no way one FTE, one person is going to be able to do all that work, especially for our whole region, which is big. Our region is the size of West Virginia. There's no money in the budget for travel. So thankfully our COERC board gives us funding to hire a tribal family coordinator in each village. We're really lucky to have that, and I know that not everyone can have that. So I do have people in the villages that can do some of this work, but again, it's a lot, and then that doesn't count for any of my time or any of our other staff time who are helping with training, who are helping with training or helping with the implementation process. That money doesn't come out of our compact funds. So again, some of us are really lucky that we're able to use funding from like the BIA compact funds, 4E funds, to try to build that up a little bit more. And again, the FTE that we received was 2017 rates. So that hasn't gone up either. Even that doesn't account for any COLA or changes in indirect. So with that new bill going forward, I'm really hopeful that we can get that increase. And again, we have 18 signers now. If other tribes want to come in right now with the 1.6, how are we gonna add them in with the 1.6? Who has to give up theirs, their money, so that other folks can be added in? Just some things to think about.
Thank you for those responses. It sounds like anything without knowing what the budget is going to be, it's really challenging to plan. Representative Zulkosky and Mary, can the funding for the Tribal Compact be established in the Department of Health and Social Services budget as a regular general fund item?
I think that's a really great question, and something that our budget subcommittee had some dialogue about this year with respect to, is there an opportunity to adjust the structure of the Office of Children's Services budget to create a line item for the Tribal Child Welfare Compact. And I think that's something that is worthwhile looking to do in upcoming fiscal years. In this particular fiscal year, with the late start of session, the compressed timeline for the budget subcommittee process, what we wanted to do was simply make sure that we could find additional resources where possible to infuse into the compact, knowing that it will pay dividends at the back end in terms of tribes being able to really have prevention minded focus and to be able to wrap around holistic tribal services that are already available to regions. And so our focus at the subcommittee level, with all of the conditions that we were working under in this particular fiscal year, was to make sure that we could infuse some resources where they're currently utilized. That being said, I think there's an opportunity to evaluate the benefit of setting aside a line item for the compact. Also important to keep in mind that anytime that's done, it's also highlighted for anybody to take a look at and to potentially, maybe there are people who are not proponents of the Tribal Child Welfare Compact, and they're largely proponents of cutting the state's budget. And so is that something that could potentially be weaponized in terms of fighting for funding year by year? Hopefully that's not the case. I think that there's a lot of legislators in our building who understand the importance of healthy family units and children who are safe and thriving. But I think that there's an opportunity to look at restructuring the line item within the Office of Children's Services to make sure that it doesn't get eaten up by other program priorities. So certainly something that we can look into.
Yeah, and I'm really happy to hear that. And I think that's always the big question of the day or the year is how will the compact be funded? And we know that the OCS has several initiatives that they are trying to get off the ground, and not always knowing what their budget is going to be makes it very difficult to prioritize or to know how to shift money around to fund a compact, a child welfare compact. The one thing that I do want to point out is this is a government to government agreement. We have a child welfare compact in place, it can be used as a model for other compacts that the state may have for different departments. So I know there's talk about having an education compact. So I think the work that we do with the Child Welfare Compact is so important just to use as a model, as a foundation, as we look at how the state is going to compact with other departments, other pieces of the tribe, and how it could look, what the model is going to look like. Are we going to be put off to the side, if we can come up with money here or there, piece it together, or if we can come up with great rationale, like, well, we can make the money back through 4E. Yes, we probably can eventually, but is that the priority? I mean, that's what our end result we hope to be. But I think we need to look at the overall government to government agreement that we have and really respect what it means to have a compact in place. So I really hope it can be a part of the regular general fund budget as far as having its own line item for all the reasons that we've talked about so far, and just for the future of other tribal compacts that come to be.
Thank you for sharing some of the challenges for putting that as a line item in the budget and how it could be beneficial. Next is a question for all of our panelists. Is there a sense of what the internal costs may look like for these services to continue providing high quality care?
Well, that's a tricky question. I think that's gonna look different for any tribe, just like it'll look different from the state. And as they shift their priorities and where they're doing really well and where they have their challenges. So in internal cost, we do have to operate a child welfare system. The great thing about the compact is it's non-federal money. And one of the selling points as we were negotiating the compact was that we were going to help tribes build up their Title 4E programs. Money from the compact is reimbursable, or it is matchable money. So if we do the work the way that we all agree to, we can get reimbursed, potentially building up our program so we'll need less and less money from the state as we move forward. So the internal cost is going to vary. It's a lot of work. It's not just staff time, but it's, having the buildings, a place to do family contacts, travel out to communities, training for staff, or all the internal expenses that OCS has to manage their division.
I would just add on and affirm what Mary mentioned. One thing that became really clear when we were working through the budget subcommittee process in working with the compact facilitator and the co-lead negotiators for the compact, the tribal co-lead negotiators for the compact, is that exactly what Mary said, that there are tribes that are on unequal footing with respect to the capacity that's been developed for the myriad of co-signers, right? So we have regional tribal nonprofits, we have tribes representing 161 tribes. All of them are going to have a varying degree of tribes that have had child welfare services and programs that have been in place for decades, as well as those who are stepping into this as a new relationship and developing that capacity. And I would just go back to what I said earlier with respect to how much the state has funded the compact every year. Has really, I believe the average amount to tribes is anywhere from about 60,000 to about 90,000. Depending on the region, which is all established through the tribal co-signers in terms of that decision making. And I think what that tells us is if the state is really looking to move the needle on these disparities, the disproportionality, to really revolutionize the system in the way that the Tribal Compact is aiming to do that. Again, there needs to be an infusion of resources that accounts for that by ensuring that we're bringing all of the tribes along, whether they are newer in developing that capacity or they have long established these programs for decades, to ensure that, you know, all of our tribes are successful. I think one thing, and I appreciate the presentation here and the photo of former Lieutenant Governor Davidson. I think one thing that she kind of always speaks to is that when tribes are successful, the state is successful. And I think that's a really important mantra to keep in mind, and something that certainly guides my perspective as I advocate at the state level.
Yes, I agree. I agree with that as well. And, you know, something that even the tribe, you know, all the tribes and tribal organizations, we like we were saying, they're all different sizes, all different capacity levels, but we all want everyone to succeed. Sometimes it gets a little frustrating because some of us have social services programs already in place. And we were like, well, we know what we're doing. Give us more money. We have, we have higher numbers, but at the same time, we want these smaller tribes to come on board and to be successful. And we've really been sticking with them and, giving them our handbooks if needed, giving them our training materials to try to get them up to speed and, helping them get 4B approved for 4B funding. That as soon as you have 4B funding, then you can apply for 4E funding and then start to get those reimbursements. There have been a little bit of restriction there because, we have kids all over the state, and we'd really like to have somebody in Anchorage that could do the scopes down there, because I have one staff member down there, but again, she's only one, and I can't have her take on all those scopes. She already has her own job. So having extra funding to keep this going, I think our numbers will definitely go up. And I'm just really excited and hope that the increase happens so that we can continue to provide services. I'm really hopeful for that. Our families deserve it. I don't want to lose more kids to different parts of the state or different states altogether because we just don't have the funding to provide those services.
Thank you very much for those responses. Now we're going to transition to the Indian Child Welfare Act, commonly known as ICWA. Representative Zulkosky, for tribal citizens who might not know, what is the relation between this compact and ICWA?
Thanks for that question. I'm certainly not an ICWA expert. I might know enough to be dangerous. So I absolutely welcome Mary and Traci, helping me along on this area. As I understand it, the Indian Child Welfare Act has been in place for a while at this point. Federal law that essentially looks, if a child is removed from the home, essentially looks within that family unit to see if there's an opportunity for placement of that child within their own family unit as a means, again, to address the disproportionate number of Alaska Native and American Indian children that are removed from their home in a child welfare, in a respective child welfare system. And so typically, if a child is not able to be placed with a family member, extended family member, the next best opportunity, as I understand it, is to place them in a similar cultural environment. So I'll use myself as an example as a Yupik woman from Western Alaska. If I had been removed from my home beyond looking to my extended family, the next best opportunity for me, if I was a child in that situation, would be to be placed in another Yupik home so that my cultural values and identity could be affirmed and protected. I think that with respect to the Child Welfare Compact, we know that the state of Alaska has struggled in meeting its ICWA obligations. That's always a challenge, I think, in a lot of states. So, not to speak disparagingly about the good, hard work that's being done within the Office of Children's Services, but I think the work of tribes can really complement the state's efforts in upholding ICWA compliance. One thing that we've heard in testimony from tribal cosigners as House Bill 184 has moved through the committee process, and we heard this from Brittany Madras at Tanana Chiefs Conference, is they've encountered circumstances where maybe a family is in the child welfare system, and if an OCS worker from the state shows up, maybe the family doesn't open the door for them. But if somebody that they know from the tribe is trying to do the same scope of work to help identify family members, to help identify contact information, the family may be more likely to open the door and work with their tribe, which increase public trust, but also helps tribal cosigners of the compact to help the state fulfill its federal obligation to the Indian Child Welfare Act. So I think that there's a lot of work that's done by tribes and who participate in the compact to really complement the state's work, because we know, our tribes know who their members are. They know family structures. They know a lot more than a bureaucrat that works for the state of Alaska. And so if there's an opportunity to provide benefit both to the state OCS system, but also to protect the tribe's ability to have jurisdiction and family support over its members, then it's a win-win. Again, an example of when the states succeed, or when the tribes succeed, then the state can also succeed. And so hopefully I covered that well, but I certainly welcome Traci or Mary filling in where I may have misspoken.
I think you did an excellent job covering that question, especially in regards to how we hope to help the state meet their obligations under ICWA through the compact. A lot of our focus is on identifying relatives earlier, doing safety home evaluations, helping families keep connected through family contact, and then also the continuation of ongoing relative searches. So another thing that you mentioned that is a huge benefit is many of us have workers out in our rural communities where OCS is just really struggling to get out there often enough, and where we have people on the ground who are a member of the same community as the families who may be struggling. They will know a lot sooner, faster, and can provide intervention a lot quicker than the state or any of us in a central location. So I think that was a great answer, and that really is the big overall goal of how to help fulfill all of the obligations of ICWA through the compact.
Yeah, I agree. You answered that very well. I just wanted to answer or add one more bit of information, is that the 5 different scopes of work, as you look through them, ICWA is all over, all of ICWA's regulations and how to follow through with them line by line in the compact. We made sure to have ICWA, the federal law, and our scope right there. So we made sure we were doing everything that was required.
Thank you. This next question is for everyone. Is there anything you'd like to add to our conversation, or anything you want to elaborate more on that will benefit our tribal citizens?
I think that the last thing that I would like to add on is how important this compact is to keep in place. And no matter which direction we go, it has a lot of impact on child welfare, but also other work that we're doing in within tribes. It also gives tribes to operate and really use their authority to protect their tribal citizens on the ground in the small communities or even in central locations. Families, we've been hearing a lot from the state that families do not trust OCS, and that is absolutely true. I can't think of any family, native or non-native, that trust OCS. But we do, like you've heard, have the highest number of children in custody of the state. And with that, I think it's just extremely important that we keep it a priority, that we look to not just help reduce disproportionality, but we try to help the state in fulfilling their obligations of keeping children and families safe within the whole state, and to help them because they're struggling right now. And we can do our part by being a really good partner through the compact.
Thank you, Mary. I agree. I'd also like to say that before the compact, we tribes didn't really get a lot of recognition for the work that they were doing, besides sometimes OCS. And I think with the compact really made it known in the state and throughout the country. It's the first time that this compact has happened in the entire nation. But just how much work tribes really do for their members and for their children and families. And I'm glad that that's been brought to the forefront more often. And now we're looking again, like at education and maybe a VPSO program. So all those are coming apart because up to date because of this, which is really exciting. And I also want to add, and then I'll stop talking, but that we are looking at how we can add a prevention scope of work to work with families that are kind of on the cusp of OCS knocking on the door, and trying to provide them with services before that happens, so they don't have to get another report that brings the state into their lives.
I think I would just end, Tasha, by again just really extending my appreciation to Tlingit and Haida for always pulling together opportunities to talk about the issues that are facing tribal citizens in Alaska. It is such an incredible privilege to join the ranks of Mary and Traci in talking about the Tribal Child Welfare Compact. These ladies are on the front lines of doing really difficult, trailblazing, hard work on behalf of our families, on behalf of our communities. It's difficult. We hear about the challenges that child welfare workers face at the state level that can't be much different than what our tribes encounter at the community level. And, I think what I've been really excited about is to see the progress that the compact has made under 2 different administrations, and the opportunity that we have to anchor that progress in statute to ensure that we never lose that progress, that the revolving door of policymaking in Alaska may continue to turn, but that we have protected the good work of a generation of people who have come together to really move forward a vision for our families, for our communities, for our tribes. And I feel so honored to just be a small part of that and to do what I can as an ONC tribal member from Bethel to make sure that we set up the future of our state to really thrive in these areas. I think that the state is early in its conversations around compact, but it's also an exciting time. I think Nicole Borromeo talks about it as being on the forefront of law and policy. And I hope to look back when I'm old and gray and say, I remember when, and just really appreciate the opportunity again to be with you all today.
Thank you. Now is the time when we address some public questions that came in through our Facebook Live. It looks like we have time to answer one of those. If we don't get to your question, you will get a response. We'll be sending out those questions to our panelists to get responses, but this one is from Cindy Pedersen. Is there a need for foster parents outside of Alaska like Seattle? And I believe that's directed towards Mary.
Yes, there is a need for foster parents everywhere and anywhere, and any Alaska Native living anywhere in our country, especially Seattle, because we are working on our office down there. We need placements for these children, and it is best if they are with their family, friends of the family first, our community members. But in areas like Seattle, we need to do everything we can to increase the number of state licensed foster homes, and that would be going through the state of Washington licensing agency. And if you need information on that, I saw my email up just a bit ago, and just email me and I'll get that information to you. But yes, we do need to recruit for foster homes everywhere that we have tribal citizens living, because if a child ever goes into care, we want them to be placed in a home that practices or even looks a bit familiar to them, so we're not putting them with complete strangers. So that is a great question.
I would maybe also add, perfectly timed question. I was just seeing some statistics being reported today that here in Alaska, there's also a significant loss of foster care homes following the COVID-19 pandemic. Early reporting showing that the state has lost roughly 10% of its foster care homes, which puts a big strain on capacity for making sure that our youth are in a safe and healthy environment. So if you are somebody who's willing to take in foster placement and go through that process, certainly call your local tribe or even the state to learn how to get involved in that.
Thank you very much. As we always do, we will be randomly drawing a name for all of those who have liked our Zoom Facebook Live event. So if you haven't already, make sure you like our Facebook Live event right now for a chance to win a door prize. While we wait for the last few likes to come in, I want to acknowledge and thank our tribal partners, Sealaska and Tlingit and Haida Regional Housing Authority. And let's see, it looks like we have a few more likes coming in. Okay, our first random drawing winner is Sheena James, wins the Hydro Flask. Congratulations. And our final random drawing winner is Sandy Edwardson with the David Boxley Formline t-shirt. Please message us through our Facebook page to provide us with your mailing address and we'll get your prize in the mail. Gunalchéesh, Háw'aa, everyone, for joining us. Before we close, we just want to remind our tribal citizens to uphold our tribal value of respect for self, elders, and others, and get vaccinated today to protect your friends, family, and community. We hope you enjoyed today's forum and found it informative. We invite you to join us for our next virtual Native Issues Forum on May 20th to provide an update on the Alaska Native landless communities.